The night sky over New Terra was nothing like the one Elias had grown up with on Earth. Instead of a single pale moon, 3 satellites of varying sizes hung among unfamiliar constellations, bathing the settlement in an eerie, silver-blue glow. Elias sat on the roof of his family's prefabricated home, legs dangling over the edge as he gazed upward. 6 months since the evacuation ships had brought them here, and he still couldn't get used to the alien skyscape. Elias. Inside now. His mother's voice cut through his thoughts. Curfew in 15 minutes. The boy sighed but didn't move. At 12 years old, he was caught in that frustrating space between childhood and adolescence, where independence felt vital yet constantly out of reach. "Did you hear me?" His mother appeared in the doorway below, her face tight with worry. "The perimeter drones will be active soon." "Just 5 more minutes," Elias pleaded, his eyes still fixed on the stars. His mother's expression softened slightly. 3 minutes. Not a second more. As she disappeared back inside, Elias returned his attention to the night sky. The adults were always so careful, so afraid. Ever since Earth had become uninhabitable, the climate finally collapsing after centuries of abuse, humanity had been guests on this world. The indigenous species, the Varine, had allowed the human refugees to establish settlements on their less populated continent, but relations remained tense. Elias had never actually seen a Varine up close. They kept to themselves, communicating only through designated human ambassadors. In the settlement school, they were taught that the Varine were an ancient, technologically advanced race who appeared somewhat reptilian, but possessed abilities that humans might consider supernatural. A flicker of movement caught his eye, something large crossing the sky, briefly obscuring the stars. Not a ship or a drone. Something alive. Before he could process what he'd seen, his mother called again. Reluctantly, Elias climbed back through the roof access and down into the house. During dinner, his parents discussed the usual adult concerns: water rationing, the latest diplomatic tensions, the expansion of the agricultural sector. Elias pushed his synthetic protein around his plate, thinking about the flying shape he'd glimpsed. "May I be excused?" he asked when his parents' conversation turned to work schedules. His mother frowned at his half-eaten meal, but nodded. Straight to homework, not games. In his room, Elias pulled up the settlement's information database on his tablet. He typed "Flying Creatures New Terra" into the search field. Most results were about the small, bat-like animals that inhabited the forests beyond the settlement. Nothing large enough to match what he'd seen. On impulse, he changed his search to Varine legends. The results were sparse. The aliens shared little of their culture with humans. But one entry caught his attention: the Sky Guardians. According to limited translations of Varine mythology, ancient beings once soared through the skies, protecting the world from cosmic threats. The accompanying illustration showed a creature with an elongated body, multiple sets of wings, and a serpentine head. "Dragons," Elias whispered to himself. They had dragons. Sleep came fitfully that night, his dreams filled with flying shadows and strange worlds. When morning arrived, Elias had made a decision. He would find whatever he had seen. After school, instead of heading straight home as required by settlement rules, Elias slipped away toward the eastern boundary. The perimeter was marked by a series of tall poles that projected an invisible monitoring field, not a physical barrier, but one that would alert security if crossed. He discovered a blind spot 3 weeks earlier while retrieving a ball that had rolled near the boundary. A section where 2 monitoring fields overlapped imperfectly, creating a narrow corridor where the sensors canceled each other out. It was risky, but his curiosity outweighed his caution. Checking to ensure no one was watching, Elias darted between the poles at the precise spot he'd identified. His heart pounded as he entered the off-limits terrain beyond the settlement. The landscape changed quickly from the orderly human construction to the wild, alien ecosystem of New Terra. The native vegetation was predominantly blue-green, with structures more similar to Earth's ferns and fungi than true trees. The ground felt slightly springy beneath his feet. Elias checked his small compass and headed east, toward the mountainous region where he thought the flying shape had been heading. After an hour of walking, doubt began to creep in. This was foolish and dangerous. His parents would be frantic when he didn't return home. He was about to turn back when he noticed something unusual: a pattern of broken vegetation, as if something large had crashed through the forest canopy. Following the trail of destruction, Elias came to a small clearing where the ground had been gouged, like something had skidded to a halt. At the end of this path lay a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of the settlement's largest transport vehicle. Its body was serpentine but with multiple limbs, including what appeared to be 3 sets of wings now folded and damaged against its sides. Scales of deep indigo covered most of its body, fading to silver along its underside. Its head was elongated with multiple eyes arranged in a pattern that reminded Elias of a crown. The creature was breathing, shallow, labored breaths that made its entire body shudder. Elias froze, paralyzed between fear and wonder. This was no Varine as they had been described. This was something else entirely. As if sensing his presence, the creature's eyes opened, all 9 of them, glowing with an inner light like captured stars. It made no move to attack or flee. Instead, it simply watched him, an intelligence in its gaze that transcended the barrier between species. Elias should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at him to flee. Instead, he took a step forward. "Are you hurt?" he asked, immediately feeling foolish. Even if this creature understood language, it wouldn't be human speech. To his astonishment, a voice filled his mind, not sound, but pure meaning somehow translated into words he could comprehend. "I am dying, small one. The last of my kind, finally joining my brethren in the void." Elias gasped, stumbling backward. The creature had responded to him mentally. You can understand me? You can speak. Not speaking as you know it. Your mind is unusually receptive. Most humans have closed themselves to such communication." The creature's body trembled with another labored breath. "You should return to your settlement. It is not safe for you here." "What are you?" Elias asked, ignoring the warning. "My kind had many names across many worlds. Your ancestors might have called us dragons, though we are not of your earth. The Varine named us guardians." "You're dying," Elias said, the reality of the situation sinking in. "Can I help? I could get the adults, our doctors." "No help remains for me in this universe. My time concludes as it must. I merely sought solitude for my passing." The dragon's mental voice wavered. "I did not anticipate an audience." Despite the warning, Elias moved closer. "Why are you the last? What happened to the others like you?" "A slow extinction. We were never numerous, but we were essential." The creature's eyes dimmed momentarily before brightening again. "We maintained cosmic balances your sciences have not yet discovered. As the old stars died and new civilizations arose, our purpose dimmed. Some chose to pass into the void willingly. Others faded when their bonded worlds perished. I remained because of my bond to this world, to the Varine." "But the Varine are still here," Elias said. "They too have forgotten. They advanced, turned inward with their technologies, no longer looking to the skies with wonder. When a guardian is forgotten, our essence begins to fade." A sound like distant thunder rumbled from the creature's chest. "It has been 3 centuries since a Varine child sang the old songs or left offerings at the sacred peaks." Elias noticed a strange, luminous fluid seeping from wounds along the dragon's side. "You're injured. A meteorite breach. Once, I would have healed quickly. Now, with my connection to this world so tenuous, I have not the strength." The boy's gaze traveled over the magnificent being, taking in the intricate patterns on its scales, the subtle luminescence that seemed to pulse beneath its skin. Even dying, it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I don't want you to die alone," Elias said, surprising himself with the words. The dragon's eyes focused on him more intently. "And what would you do instead, human child?" Without answering, Elias moved to the creature's side and sat down on the soft ground beside its massive head. He was close enough now to feel the heat radiating from the dragon's body, to smell the strange metallic scent of its blood. "My name is Elias," he said. "Names, we did not use them as you do. But the Varine once called me Astronix, Watcher of the Seventh Sky." "That's a good name," Elias said, not knowing what else to offer. "It sounds important. Once, perhaps." A tremor ran through Astronix's body. "Tell me, Elias of Earth, why have humans come to this world?" The patterns shifted suddenly. "I sensed your arrival, but have been too weak to observe closely." Elias hesitated, then explained about Earth's climate collapse, the desperate search for habitable worlds, and the Varine's conditional acceptance of human refugees. Wanderers seeking sanctuary. A tale as old as sentient life. Astronix's mental voice grew momentarily stronger. And yet, unlike the Varine, you still look up at the stars with wonder. Your child still ventures beyond safe boundaries out of curiosity. I'll get in trouble for that, Elias admitted. Trouble is often the price of discovery. The dragon's eyes dimmed again, longer this time. I grow weaker. You should go, Elias. Death is not for the young to witness. I don't want to leave you, Elias insisted. No one should die alone. The statement hung between them, simple yet profound. Finally, Astronix replied, compassion, rare and precious across all worlds. Very well, stay if you wish. They sat in silence as the alien sun began to sink lower in the sky. Elias knew he would face severe consequences for his absence, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. There was something ancient and magnificent dying beside him, something that had soared between stars and watched civilizations rise and fall. Will you tell me about the stars? Elias asked suddenly. The ones you've seen. Astronix's mind touched his again, and suddenly Elias wasn't sitting in a clearing on New Terra anymore. He was soaring through the cosmos, watching binary stars dance around each other in a gravitational ballet. He witnessed the birth of a solar system from swirling cosmic dust, felt the cold vacuum of space and the intense heat of solar flares. That's amazing, Elias whispered when the vision faded. You've seen so much. A guardian's purpose is to witness, to remember, to preserve the patterns. Astronix's breathing had become more labored. When I am gone, these memories will disperse back into the cosmic consciousness from which we all emerge. That's not fair, Elias said, a lump forming in his throat. Someone should remember you. The dragon's largest eye fixed on him. Perhaps someone will. As twilight deepened, Elias became aware of a faint luminescence spreading across Astronix's scales. The indigo darkened to violet, then began to sparkle like the night sky itself. What's happening to you? He asked, alarmed. My final transition begins. My physical form returns to star stuff. There was no fear in the dragon's mental voice, only a profound acceptance. It is beautiful, in its way. Elias felt tears welling in his eyes. I'm glad I found you. As am I, young one. It has been a very long time since I conversed with another being. Astronix's body shuddered. I have a request, if you are willing. Anything, Elias said without hesitation. The Varine have forgotten their guardians, but perhaps humans need not. Would you remember me, Elias of Earth? Would you look to the stars and recall that once, being soared among them, watching over the cosmic dance? I'll remember, Elias promised, his voice breaking. I'll tell others too. Then my passing serves a purpose after all. The luminescence had spread to cover Astronix entirely now, making the dragon appear as if constructed from starlight rather than physical matter. One final gift before I go. Before Elias could respond, Astronix's mind enveloped his own once more. This time, the connection went deeper. Knowledge flooded into him, not just isolated visions, but understanding. The true nature of stars, the hidden patterns of cosmic energy, the secret language of celestial bodies. It was too much for his young mind to fully comprehend, but it nestled within him, waiting to be unpacked over time. When the transfer ended, Elias gasped, overwhelmed by the experience. What did you do? I have shared the Guardian sight with you. It will unfold as you grow, as you are ready. Astronix's form was becoming increasingly transparent, the edges of the massive body dissolving into motes of light. Use it wisely, Star Child. Please don't go, Elias whispered, though he knew it was futile. All things must end to allow new beginnings. The dragon's voice was fading now, becoming difficult to perceive. But perhaps, not all endings are final. The clearing filled with dancing lights as Astronix's body continued to dissolve. The process was beautiful rather than grotesque, like watching a constellation rearrange itself in the night sky. Look for me in the patterns between stars, Elias. In the spaces where light meets darkness. I will be there, in a different form. With those final words, the last alien dragon completed its transformation. The luminous particles swirled around Elias momentarily, as if in farewell, before rising skyward in a spiral of light. They ascended higher and higher until they merged with the emerging stars of the alien night. Elias remained seated in the clearing, tears streaming down his face. He had come seeking adventure and found something far greater, an ending and perhaps, though he didn't yet understand how, a beginning. The sound of search drones broke the silence. The settlement must have noticed his absence and initiated a search. In moments, they would find him and take him back to safety, to the rules and boundaries of human existence on this borrowed world. But as Elias stood to meet his inevitable punishment, he felt different. The Guardian's knowledge hummed within him, subtle yet profound. He looked up at the unfamiliar constellations with new eyes, seeing patterns and connections invisible before. "I'll remember," he whispered to the night sky. "I promise." The search party found him minutes later, a small boy standing alone in a clearing, face turned upward, transfixed by the stars as if they had spoken to him. They did not see the faint luminescence that clung to him, the subtle shimmer in his eyes that hadn't been there before. They could not know that the last guardian of New Terra had passed its legacy to a human child, creating a bridge between two species that had never met. As they led him back toward the settlement, Elias felt the weight of his promise. He would remember Astronix. He would learn to understand the knowledge he'd been given. And someday, somehow, he would help humans and Varine alike remember to look up at the stars with wonder. The lights of the human settlement appeared on the horizon, artificial and contained compared to the vast cosmic display above. Elias knew he faced restrictions, punishment, disappointed parents. But none of that seemed important anymore. He had sat with a dying star dragon and been forever changed. In the sky above, a new star winked into existence, one that hadn't been there before. No human or Varine astronomer would be able to explain its sudden appearance. But Elias knew. It was Astronix, taking a new place in the cosmic pattern, watching over New Terra once more. The search team didn't notice when Elias raised his hand in a small wave toward that new star. Nor did they see the momentary pulse of light that answered him from the heavens. 2 weeks of house arrest gave Elias plenty of time to contemplate his experience in the forest. His parents had been equal parts furious and relieved when the search team had brought him home. The settlement council had considered harsher penalties. Interactions with unknown alien life forms were strictly regulated. But in the end, they'd concluded that Elias had simply gotten lost while exploring. He hadn't told anyone about Astronix. How could he? They would think he was making up stories to excuse his behavior, or worse, they would believe him and want to find where the dragon had been. But there was nothing physical left to find, just a clearing in an alien forest and perhaps some unusual energy readings that would soon fade. On the 15th night of his confinement, Elias woke suddenly from a dream of flying among the stars. His room was dark except for a faint blue glow coming from his own skin. He held up his hands, watching in fascination as tiny points of light seemed to move beneath his epidermis, tracing patterns like constellations. "The Guardian's sight," he whispered, remembering Astronix's final gift. Drawn by an instinct he didn't understand, Elias moved to his window and looked up at the night sky. The new star, Astronix's star, pulsed once, twice, 3 times in sequence. Without knowing how he knew, Elias understood it was a summons. His punishment would end tomorrow. He could wait, return to the clearing properly during daylight. But the pull was too strong to resist. Moving silently, Elias dressed and slipped out of his room. His parents slept soundly as he eased open the front door and stepped into the night. The settlement was quiet under curfew, the only movement coming from the automated security drones patrolling at regular intervals. Elias had memorized their patterns during his many nights of roof-sitting. He kept to the shadows, timing his movements carefully until he reached the eastern boundary and his secret passage point. Once beyond the perimeter, he moved more freely, guided by the pulsing star above and the strange new awareness within him. The forest was different at night. The native flora emitted faint bioluminescence, casting the landscape in ghostly blue-green light. Sounds of alien nocturnal creatures echoed around him, but Elias felt no fear. He was being called, and somehow, he knew he was protected. The clearing looked transformed. Where Astronix's physical form had dissolved, a perfect circle of luminous vegetation now grew, plants unlike any Elias had seen before, with translucent leaves that captured and reflected starlight. At the center of this circle, a small object glinted. Elias approached cautiously, kneeling beside the object. It was a crystalline structure about the size of his palm, faceted like a diamond, but with an interior that swirled with colors and lights like a miniature galaxy. When he touched it, knowledge flooded his mind once more, not overwhelming this time, but focused and clear. The crystal was a seed, not biological in the way Earth plants grew from seeds, but cosmic, a concentrated point of energy and information that, under the right conditions, could develop into a new guardian. Astronix had not simply died. The dragon had transformed and, in doing so, created the potential for continuation. But the seed needed something Astronix alone could not provide, a connection to the sentient beings of this world. It needed acknowledgement, belief, wonder. It needed to be remembered. Cradling the crystal seed in his hands, Elias knew with absolute certainty what he needed to do. This wasn't just about remembering Astronix. It was about ensuring that Guardians would continue to exist in this universe. But he couldn't do it alone. He needed to bridge two worlds, human and Vereen. The realization brought both clarity and apprehension. Humans and Vereen barely interacted, separated by mutual caution and cultural differences. How could a 12-year-old boy possibly bring them together? As if in response to his doubt, the crystal pulsed warmly in his palm. Through it, Elias sensed Astronix's lingering consciousness, not the dragon's full being, but an echo, a fragment preserved within the seed. It conveyed not words but impressions, patience, persistence, faith. "I'll find a way," Elias promised, carefully tucking the crystal into his pocket. The journey back to the settlement was easier somehow, as if the forest itself was guiding him. He slipped through his blind spot in the perimeter just before dawn, evading the security drones with an uncanny sense of their movements. When he reached home, he climbed through his bedroom window and collapsed into bed, exhausted but filled with purpose. His mother woke him 3 hours later. "Last day of restriction," she said, her voice stern but with an undercurrent of relief. "The past 2 weeks have been difficult for everyone. I expect exemplary behavior going forward, Elias. No more wandering off, no more secrets." Guilt twisted in his stomach. He was already keeping the biggest secret of his life, with no plans to reveal it. "I understand, Mom. I'm sorry for worrying you." Her expression softened. "We came to this world for a fresh start, to build something together. We can't do that if we can't trust each other." The words hit harder than she could know. Trust. That's what he was violating by concealing his encounter with Astronix. But how could he explain something so extraordinary? They'd never let him out of their sight again. After his mother left, Elias carefully examined the crystal seed in the morning light. Its interior swirled with cosmic patterns, miniature nebulae and star formations suspended in crystalline perfection. He wrapped it in a soft cloth and hid it in a compartment beneath his desk drawer. That afternoon, as his restriction officially ended, Elias was permitted to return to normal activities. Instead of joining the other children in the recreation area, he headed to the settlement's small library. If he was going to fulfill his promise to Astronix, he needed information. The settlement's database contained limited information about Vereen culture, mostly practical matters related to diplomacy and cohabitation protocols. But there was one section that caught his interest, a record of the formal greeting ceremony that had taken place when humans first landed on New Terra. According to the account, a delegation of 7 Vereen representatives had met with human leaders. The ceremony had included an exchange of symbolic gifts and a ritual sharing of sustenance. Most intriguing was the mention of a young Vereen present at the ceremony, the child of one of the delegates, described as unusually curious about human customs. Elias searched for images from the event and found a group photograph. He zoomed in on the Vereen delegation. They were indeed reptilian in appearance, with elongated faces, scaled skin in various shades of copper and bronze, and eyes with vertical pupils. The young Vereen stood slightly apart from the adults, and something about its posture suggested the same awkward self-consciousness that Elias often felt among grown-ups. A plan began to form in his mind. If he could somehow make contact with that young Vereen, perhaps they could form a connection, a first step toward sharing the knowledge of the Guardians. But how? The Vereen lived in their own cities, far from the human settlement. The only regular contact between the species occurred through official diplomatic channels. The answer came 3 days later, When his father mentioned at dinner that a Varine delegation would be visiting the settlement for a scheduled diplomatic conference. They're sending their cultural attaché this time, his father said, scrolling through his tablet. Apparently, there's interest in establishing some kind of cultural exchange program. Elias looked up sharply. When are they coming? Next week. Why the interest? His father regarded him with mild suspicion. Just curious. We learn about them in school, but we never actually see them. His mother exchanged a glance with his father. The diplomatic building is off limits to civilians during official visits, Elias. Don't get any ideas. I know, he said quickly. I was just wondering. But he was already forming a plan. The crystal seed hummed faintly in its hiding place, as if in approval. The week passed with agonizing slowness. Elias spent his time preparing, using the guardian sight that Astronix had gifted him to better understand the cosmic patterns. Each night, he would hold the crystal seed and gaze at the stars, absorbing knowledge that no human had ever possessed. He learned to see the connections between celestial bodies, the flows of cosmic energy, the subtle resonances that linked all living things. Most importantly, he discovered that he could project his thoughts, not as clearly as Astronix had communicated with him, but enough to potentially reach a receptive mind. It exhausted him to try, but he practiced diligently, sending simple messages to small native creatures in the settlement's green spaces. When the day of the Varine visit arrived, Elias was ready. He attended school as usual, but feigned illness after lunch. The school nurse, finding nothing physically wrong but noting his heightened temperature, a side effect of his practice with the guardian's sight, sent him home early. Instead of going home, Elias made his way to the diplomatic quarter. The crystal seed was wrapped in cloth and tucked securely in his inner pocket. He could feel it resonating with his elevated emotional state, growing warmer against his chest. The diplomatic building was easily identifiable, larger than most settlement structures, and surrounded by a decorative garden that incorporated both earth plants and native New Terran vegetation. 2 human security officers stood at the main entrance, checking credentials of those entering. Elias had no chance of getting inside through the front. Instead, he circled around to the garden, looking for another way. The back of the building featured large windows overlooking a courtyard where tables had been arranged, presumably for the diplomatic reception. Finding a dense cluster of bushes with a good view of the courtyard, Elias settled in to wait. It was a risk. If security sweeps detected him, he'd be in trouble far worse than his previous punishment. But the crystal pulsed reassuringly against his chest, and somewhere above, he knew Astronix's star was watching. After an hour, the courtyard began to fill with people. Human diplomats in formal attire mingled awkwardly with the Varine delegation. The aliens moved with a fluid grace that made their reptilian appearance seem elegant rather than threatening. Their scaled skin gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, displaying subtle iridescent patterns when they moved. Elias scanned the group anxiously, looking for any sign of a younger Varine. Had they brought the same child who had attended the first contact ceremony? The crystal grew warmer, almost uncomfortably so, as if sensing proximity to something important. And then he saw them, a younger, smaller Varine standing slightly apart from the adult delegation, examining a flowering earth plant with evident curiosity. This Varine was a lighter shade than the others, with copper-gold scales and eyes that seemed wider, more expressive. Elias took a deep breath and focused. He had practiced this, but never at such a distance or with a non-Earth species. Holding the crystal seed through the cloth of his pocket, he concentrated on projecting a simple thought toward the young Varine. I know about the Guardians. The young Varine's head snapped up, eyes darting around in confusion. They had sensed something. Encouraged, Elias tried again. Asterisk, the last Guardian gave me a seed. It needs both humans and Varine to grow. Asterisk. The young Varine was definitely reacting now, moving away from the flowering plant and scanning the garden intently. One of the adult Varine noticed and approached, saying something in their sibilant language. The younger one responded, gesturing toward the garden. Elias's heart raced. He was running out of time. With a final surge of concentration, he projected one last thought, pouring all his desperation and sincerity into it. Asterisk, meet me at the eastern forest clearing where the Guardian ascended. Tonight. Please. Asterisk. The mental effort left him dizzy and drained. Through blurred vision, he saw the young Varine freeze, then deliberately turned toward his hiding place. Their eyes met across the distance, human and alien, and in that moment, Elias felt something like recognition pass between them. The young Varine gave an almost imperceptible nod before turning back to join the adult. It was enough. Elias retreated from his hiding place, careful to avoid the security patrols as he made his way out of the diplomatic quarter. By the time he reached home, exhaustion had overtaken him. His mother, believing he had come straight from school, sent him to bed with concerned instructions to rest. Elias didn't argue. He needed to recover his strength for tonight. He set an alarm for midnight and fell into a deep sleep filled with dreams of stars and dragons and bridges spanning impossible distances. The alarm woke him with a start. Elias moved silently through the darkened house, the routine of sneaking out now familiar. The crystal seed glowed faintly through the cloth wrapping, providing just enough light to guide his movements. He left a note on his bed this time, a precaution in case he was discovered missing again. It didn't reveal the truth, merely claimed he needed to check something and would be back by morning. It wouldn't prevent punishment, but it might reduce his parents' fear. The perimeter crossing went smoothly, and soon Elias was making his way through the alien forest toward the clearing where he had first met Astronix. The luminous vegetation lit his path, seeming to brighten as he approached the sacred spot where the Guardian had ascended. The circle of strange plants that had grown where Astronix's body had dissolved now glowed with increased intensity, as if anticipating something significant. Elias moved to the center of the circle and waited, the crystal seed now removed from its wrapping and held in his open palm. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a tiny heartbeat. Time passed with no sign of the young Varine. Doubt began to creep in. Had he misinterpreted that nod? Had the alien even received his mental messages? Perhaps it had been reported to the adults, and even now, search parties might be organizing to find the human intruder who had disrupted the diplomatic event. Just as his hope began to fade, a rustling sound came from the edge of the clearing. Elias tensed, prepared to run if necessary. But it was the young Varine who stepped into the circle of light, alone and unarmed. Up close, they were both more alien and more familiar than Elias had expected, clearly not human, with scaled skin and those vertical pupil eyes, yet with a posture and expression that conveyed recognizable emotions. Caution, curiosity, wonder. "You are the human who knows of the Guardians," the Varine said in perfect English, the voice higher-pitched than an adult's, but with a sibilant quality that marked it as non-human. Elias nodded, speechless for a moment at having actually succeeded in making contact. "I am Therin," the young Varine continued, "child of Ambassador Serix, of the Scholar caste." "I'm Elias," he managed to reply. "How did you find this place?" Therin's head tilted slightly. "I followed the resonance of what you carry. And I have been here before, though long ago." "You've been here? You've seen a Guardian?" Elias couldn't keep the excitement from his voice. "Not seen. Not as you have." Therin moved closer, eyes fixed on the crystal in Elias's palm. "When I was very small, my parent brought me to this clearing and told me stories of the ancient ones who once protected our world. It is a tradition in my family line, though most Varine have forgotten." Elias extended his hand, offering a clearer view of the crystal. "His name was Astronix. He was dying when I found him. He gave me this seed and shared his knowledge with me." Therin's eyes widened, their vertical pupils expanding. "A Guardian spoke to you? Shared the sight?" There was awe in the alien's voice, and perhaps a hint of jealousy. "Yes. He said he was the last, but that maybe that didn't have to be the end." Elias took a deep breath. He dissolved into light, became a new star. "But before that, he created this seed. I think it needs both our species to grow." The young Varine was silent for a long moment, studying the crystal. Finally, they said, "There are ancient texts in my family's keeping that speak of such seeds. They were called star cores, the essence of a Guardian concentrated into physical form. But according to the texts, they require a nexus of conscious appreciation to germinate." "And what?" "Beings who acknowledge the Guardians, who look to the stars with wonder, who understand the patterns." Therin's gaze lifted from the crystal to meet Elias's eyes. "Both our peoples have forgotten how to do this properly. Humans bring your curiosity, but lack the historical connection. Varine have the history, but have turned away from the stars. So what do we do?" Elias asked, clutching the crystal tighter. "We must create the nexus." Theron's voice took on a formal quality, as if reciting something learned long ago. The texts speak of a ritual, a joining of minds focused on the cosmic patterns, anchored by the star core. But it requires more than just us two. Elias's shoulders slumped. But how? Our people barely interact. The adults would never allow this kind of mixing. A slow smile spread across Theron's face, revealing teeth that were not quite like human ones, more numerous and slightly pointed. Then perhaps we should not ask the adults. The plan they formed over the next hour was both simple and audacious. They would each recruit a small group of their peers, curious, open-minded young ones who could be trusted with the secret. They would meet at the clearing during the alignment of New Terra's 3 moons, 5 days from now, when the cosmic energies would be most favorable according to the knowledge Astronix had shared with Elias. As dawn approached, they parted with a formal gesture that Theron taught Elias, a Varine sign of alliance and shared purpose. It felt strange but significant, the first cultural exchange of its kind between their species. 5 days, Elias confirmed as they prepared to return to their separate worlds. Under the triple moons, Theron agreed. Until then, keep the star core close. It bonds with its finder. The next 5 days were a blur of secret meetings and careful preparations. Elias approached 3 of his classmates whom he trusted. Lynn, whose parents worked in xenobiology, Marcus, who had a reputation for keeping secrets, and Zara, whose fascination with New Terra's native life had gotten her into trouble almost as often as Elias. He didn't tell them everything at first, just enough to pique their curiosity. He showed them small manifestations of the Guardian's sight, making patterns of light dance between his fingers, sensing the movements of small creatures before they appeared, predicting the exact moment when clouds would part to reveal the stars. Once they were suitably impressed and sworn to secrecy, he revealed the full story of Astronix and the Crystal Seed. To his relief, they believed him. Children of the space age, raised on alien worlds, they had fewer fixed notions of what was possible than their parents' generation. The prospect of meeting young Varine was an added incentive. All 3 admitted to intense curiosity about the indigenous species that kept itself so separate from humanity. Meanwhile, according to brief mental communications from Theron, growing stronger as they practiced, the young Varine was having similar success. 4 Varine younglings from the scholar and artisan castes had agreed to participate, each bringing their own perspective on the ancient Guardian legends. On the night of the triple moon alignment, the 4 human children slipped out of the settlement, using Elias's blind spot in the perimeter. They carried small backpacks with supplies, water, light sources, first aid kits. The adults would be furious when they discovered their absence, but if the plan succeeded, perhaps they would understand. The clearing was transformed under the light of the 3 aligned moons. The circle of luminous plants now formed a perfect mandala pattern, with intricate designs that hadn't been visible before. Theron and 4 young Varine waited at the edge of the circle, their scaled skin gleaming like burnished metal in the moonlight. There was an awkward moment as the 2 groups regarded each other, the first unofficial meeting between young humans and Varine in the history of their coexistence on New Terra. Then Elias stepped forward, performed the alliance gesture that Theron had taught him, and the tension broke. Introductions were made in a mixture of English and simplified Varine language. The young aliens had been learning human speech out of curiosity, against the wishes of more conservative elders. Their names were challenging for human tongues, but they helped with pronunciations and accepted the humans' attempts with good humor. Once the initial strangeness passed, their shared purpose brought them together. Theron had brought ancient scrolls that depicted the ritual they would attempt, and Elias shared what he had learned through the Guardian's sight. Together, they arranged themselves in an alternating circle, human, Varine, human, Varine, with Elias and Theron at the center, the crystal seed placed between them. The ritual requires us to synchronize our awareness, Theron explained to the group. We must all focus on the same cosmic pattern. Like meditation? Lynn asked. Similar, but directed outward rather than inward. We must perceive together. Elias closed his eyes, feeling for the expanded awareness that Astronix had gifted him. When he opened them again, his vision had shifted. He could see beyond normal light spectrum, perceiving the energy flows that connected all living things. Most brightly illuminated were the young beings around him, each glowing with their unique life signature. I will guide the Vereen consciousness, Thurin said. Elias, you must guide the humans. Together, we will create the bridge. It was difficult at first. The human children struggled to expand their perception beyond the physical, while the young Vereen found it challenging to include humans in their mental connections, which came more naturally to their species. But gradually, with Elias and Thurin acting as conduits, a shared awareness began to form. Elias could feel the crystal seed resonating more strongly, responding to their united focus. He directed the humans' attention upward, to Astronix's star, which now shone directly above the clearing. Thurin did the same with the young Vereen, adding layers of cultural understanding that had been passed down through their family line. As their shared perception strengthened, the crystal seed began to rise from the ground, floating at eye level in the center of their circle. Light emanated from within it, not just visible light, but waves of energy that passed through their bodies like gentle electricity. Now, Thurin instructed, we must all focus on why we want the Guardian to return. Not with words, but with genuine feeling. Elias concentrated on his memories of Astronix, the dragon's ancient wisdom, its cosmic perspective, the sense of wonder it had awakened in him. He thought about how Guardians had once helped maintain balance as humans couldn't even perceive, how much poorer the universe would be without them. Around him, he could sense the others contributing their own perspectives. The Vereen added ancestral memories, cultural reverence, and understanding of Guardians as fundamental to their world's development. The humans brought fresh appreciation, untarnished curiosity, and the ability to see Guardians with new eyes rather than through the lens of fading tradition. The crystal seed absorbed it all, glowing brighter with each passing moment until it was painful to look at directly. Then, with a sound like a distant melody, it cracked open. Light poured forth, not the simple radiance of a star or lamp, but structured light that held information, memory, potential. It formed a swirling column that extended from the broken seed up into the night sky, connecting directly to Astronix's star. Within this column, a shape began to form, serpentine, winged, both familiar and new. It was translucent at first, more energy than matter, but gradually gaining definition as they watched in awe. It's happening, Thurin whispered. A Guardian is forming. The shape continued to develop, growing more distinct by the second. It was smaller than Astronix had been, with fewer wings and a simpler structure, but undeniably of the same species. Its eyes, only 5 rather than 9, opened, glowing with inner starlight. Young ones, a voice resonated in all their minds simultaneously. It was not Astronix's voice, yet carried echoes of the ancient dragon. You have called, and I have come. Elias stepped forward, drawn by an instinct he didn't fully understand. Are you? Astronix. I am not. I carry the essence that was Astronix, but I am new. The forming Guardian's body undulated within the column of light. I am the bridge, born of the last Guardian's sacrifice and your combined will. What shall we call you? One of the young Vereen asked. The beings seemed to consider this. Names are of importance to embodied creatures. You may call me Nexus, for I exist at the joining of your peoples and the cosmos. Will you stay? Elias couldn't help asking. Will you be the new Guardian of New Terra? If that is your wish. But understand, I am not as the ancient ones were. I am formed from your combined understanding, limited by what you know and believe. I will grow as you grow, learn as you learn. The being that had named itself Nexus descended lower within the column of light. I represent a new kind of Guardian, one bound not just to the cosmic patterns, but to the conscious beings who perceive them. Thurin stepped forward to stand beside Elias. The old texts speak of such a possibility, Guardians who form a direct bond with the people of a world rather than merely watching over them from afar. Indeed, Nexus confirmed. Your ancestors once had such relationships with my kind, before they turned inward with their technologies. Humans have never known this connection, until now. The implications were enormous. This wasn't just about preserving a dying species. It was about forging a new kind of relationship between sentient beings and the cosmic forces that Guardians represented. What happens now? Marcus asked, voicing what everyone was wondering. Now, I must complete my formation. Nexus's form pulsed with increasing solidity. I will need time to fully manifest in this realm. And you, the Guardian's gaze swept over the assembled children. You will need to explain to your elders what has transpired here. A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the group. Explaining their nighttime excursion would be difficult enough. Explaining that they had helped birth a new cosmic entity seemed impossible. They won't believe us, Zara said plainly. Perhaps not at first, Nexus acknowledged. But they will. For I am not merely a story or a memory now. I am real, and my presence will be felt. As if to demonstrate this fact, the Guardian's form suddenly flared with brilliant light. The column connecting it to Astronix's star widened, and for a brief moment, every human and Vereen in the clearing experienced a taste of cosmic awareness. The vast dance of galaxies, the subtle threads connecting all living things, the deeper patterns underlying reality itself. When the vision faded, Nexus had changed. The Guardian was now fully formed, its body a perfect blend of physical matter and cosmic energy. It hovered above them, wings extended, a living bridge between the mundane and the celestial. I must ascend for now, Nexus announced. My presence in this form is too intense for prolonged exposure. But I will return when called, and I will watch over this world as it begins a new chapter. How do we call you? Elias asked. Think of me, and of the stars, and of the connection between your peoples. That will be enough. The Guardian began to rise higher within the column of light. Remember this night, young ones. You have done what your elders could not. You have looked beyond boundaries and found common purpose. That, as much as my rebirth, is what will change your world. With those words, Nexus ascended rapidly, the column of light narrowing until it was merely a thread connecting the clearing to Astronix's star. Then even that faded, leaving only the circle of luminous plants and the broken halves of the crystal seed as evidence of what had occurred. The children stood in silence for a long moment, processing what they had witnessed. Then Therin turned to Elias with an expression that, despite the alien features, clearly conveyed a mix of amazement and satisfaction. We should return before we are missed, the young Vereen said practically. But we must meet again. This is only the beginning. Dawn was breaking as the human children approached the settlement boundary. They were exhausted but exhilarated, forever changed by what they had experienced. As expected, their absence had been discovered. Security drones hovered at the perimeter, and adult voices called their names. We're going to be in so much trouble, Lynn murmured. Worth it, Marcus replied with a grin. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the remnants of the Guardian's sight still active within him. Through it, he could perceive faint threads of cosmic energy connecting him to Therin and the other Vereen children, now safely returned to their own community. Stronger still was the connection leading upward to Astronix's star, where Nexus now dwelled. Come on, he said to his friends. We have a story to tell. When they crossed the perimeter, they were immediately surrounded by worried parents and stern security officers. Questions came from all directions. Where had they been? What had they done? Didn't they understand the dangers? Elias's parents pushed through the crowd, his mother's face streaked with tears, his father's tight, with a mixture of anger and relief. Elias, how could you? His mother began, then stopped, staring at her son with sudden confusion. Your eyes. Elias knew what she was seeing. The Guardian's sight had left its mark, a subtle shimmer in his irises, like captured starlight. The same change showed in his friend's eyes, a permanent reminder of their communion with cosmic forces. Mom, Dad, he said with calm certainty that belied his 12 years. There's something I need to tell you about the stars. In the days that followed, the story spread through both communities. Most adults were skeptical at first, dismissing it as an elaborate game or shared hallucination. But certain facts were harder to explain away. The physical changes in the children's eyes, the unexpected growth of unknown plants around the settlement, the new star that astronomers couldn't classify. Then came the dreams. Adults in both human and Vereen communities began reporting similar dreams of flying among the stars, of seeing patterns in the cosmos that made profound sense while sleeping but faded upon waking. The dreams left them feeling connected to something larger than themselves, and strangely, more connected to each other. 1 month after Nexus's birth, the first official joint cultural event between humans and Vereen took place. Ostensibly, it was a diplomatic initiative to improve relations. In reality, It had been orchestrated by 8 children who understood better than anyone the importance of bringing their peoples together. The event was held in the evening, in an open field between the human settlement and the nearest Varine community. Food was shared, music exchanged, tentative conversations initiated between species that had kept each other at arm's length since humans had arrived on New Terra. As the 3 moons rose, Elias and Thurin exchanged a knowing glance. Right on cue, a streak of light crossed the sky, Nexus, making its presence known in a form visible to all. Adults and children alike looked up in wonder as the Guardian traced complex patterns among the stars, patterns that somehow resonated with both human and Varine cultural symbols. "What is that?" Elias heard a human diplomat ask a Varine counterpart. The Varine hesitated, then offered a tentative response. "I believe it may be a Guardian. There are old stories." Standing with Thurin at the edge of the gathering, Elias smiled. The bridge between their peoples was forming, just as Nexus had predicted. It would take time, years, perhaps generations, before humans and Varine truly understood each other. But they had taken the first step together, looking up at the stars with shared wonder. Above them, Nexus completed its cosmic dance with a final flourish, then seemed to dissolve into the starscape. Not gone, but waiting, watching, guarding the world that both species now called home. "He'll be back when we need him," Thurin said softly. "And we'll be ready," Elias replied, feeling the echo of Astronix's final gift resonating within him. The last alien dragon had died alone, but its legacy lived on, in the Guardian it had helped create, in the bridge between 2 species, and in the heart of a human boy who had sat beside it at the end, promising to remember. Elias looked up at the night sky, at the star that had once been Astronix, and whispered, "Thank you." Somewhere in the cosmic patterns, he felt a response. Not words, but a warm certainty that the universe was unfolding exactly as it should. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.